Back in 2020, when Daniel Ricciardo was initially announced to be joining McLaren Formula One, everyone thought that was going to be a match made in heaven. You were going to have one of the best drivers on the grid, along with one of the most marketable drivers on the grid, joining one of the best young drivers on the grid in Lando Norris, who was also probably one of the other best personalities on the grid. And now everyone's thinking, how has it gone wrong? Um, Despite everyone, including myself, thinking that the Honey Badger's time with McLaren was nailed on to be an absolute success, it's been uncharacteristically and unexpectedly a hard slog. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously there has been some highs to the Ricciardo journey with McLaren, most notably the victory at Monza. And no one can ever take that away from either him or McLaren. It was McLaren's first winning years, and it was the first win for Ricciardo since he'd left Red Bull. But other than that, has there really been that much for McLaren and Ricciardo to show for it? Lando has outperformed him in the majority of the races, both in qualifying and on race day. Everyone, including myself, gave Ricciardo the benefit of the doubt at the end of the first season, saying it's a new team, it's a new type of car, it's a different environment, it's maybe just taking a while to gel. The history of Daniel Ricciardo's racing career generally shows that he gets it right by the end of his time with a team, or right from the beginning. So this was kind of a outlier of a season, and he was going to pick it up from there. Now, we're 7 races into the second season, having just finished the Monaco Grand Prix, and another subpar weekend, you would call it, for Ricciardo. And it's hard to really see where the improvements are going to come from. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the Honey Badger, the Shoey Meister, the best Aussie there's ever been. Sorry, Steve. But something just doesn't seem right at the moment. And with Zak Brown's latest comments coming when he was attending the Indy 500 race, it doesn't really help Ricciardo's position, or McLaren's for that matter. It's led to more questions being asked than answered. Ricciardo and Andreas Seidel, whilst they were at the Monaco Grand Prix this weekend, have both had to answer more questions about this particular comment from Zak Brown, which is really the first thing we've heard of potentially Ricciardo not staying on. Now, whether it's maybe a little tactic from Zak to get, obviously, the fire under Ricciardo a little bit and to get him to maybe drive with a bit more aggression and sort of up his game a little bit, I don't know. But it's a tricky one because either way, those comments could cause an imbalance with Ricciardo and cause him to go one way or another. Now, if you don't know what I mean by the comments, I will go into them a little bit, but I will leave an article in the description. But essentially what Zak Brown has said is that there are mechanisms or clauses in Ricciardo's contract with McLaren that means that if either party isn't happy with the other, there is essentially a break ability to move the driver on, or for McLaren to cut loose if they don't feel like he's performing to what they want him to or need him to, essentially. But again, adding to that confusion, like I mentioned before, both Ricciardo and Andreas Seidel at the Monaco Grand Prix have said that he's staying until 2023. So that's kind of where the confusion is lying at the minute. But it also leads me into my main point, which I think unless towards the end of the season you start to get more consistency out of Ricciardo, it might be best for both parties to cut loose and just to split. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think Ricciardo is a bad driver just because he's had a bad stint in one team. You don't become a bad driver just because certain circumstances haven't worked out for you. Like, we've seen many a driver in Formula One history go from a team which was working really well and he was gelling quite well and getting decent results, go to another team and it doesn't work out quite how we imagined it to. And I fully expect Ricciardo, if he does go to another team, to get it to work. Now, like I said, Ricciardo isn't a bad driver. McLaren, have they let Ricciardo down? I wouldn't say they have. I think they've given him plenty of opportunity and plenty of chance. From what they've told us, they've tried to manage that car as best as they can to get it to work for Ricciardo. But for some reason, it's just not working. I do think it's not exactly great for Zak to come out and make the comments that he's made, and saying and like give that hint that there may be a break clause or something like that in the contract. But other than that, McLaren have been pretty good with Ricciardo, as far as we're aware from the public eye anyway. I do think as well, going back to my point of Ricciardo still being a good driver, that if he's put in the right circumstances and in the right car, he will be at the top end of the Formula One races. He's not going to be sinking back further to the pack. And I think in the right circumstances, he could be a championship contender. Obviously, I don't think after this McLaren stint, I don't think any of the big teams are going to be coming after him. But because of the budget cuts, and basically because the budgets are obviously a lot tighter now for teams, I think obviously we've seen a lot of the middle pack close in towards the top end and being a lot more competitive. Obviously, Ferrari and Red Bull are streaks ahead of everybody, but in a few seasons, hopefully that'll become less of an issue, and you'll see more teams jostling it out for prizes and for races. And for me, I think if Ricciardo was let go at the end of the season, I think a lot of teams would be in for him. I think if you look at likes of Haas, Alpine, Williams, Alfa Romeo, those teams who are really looking to jump up, I think those could be really good circumstances for him to go into. And plus, they're probably going to have 1 or 2 seats available, either at the end of this year or at the end of next year, depending on the contracts and obviously with various drivers if they get extended or not. But also on the other side of it, if you look at McLaren are going to have plenty of drivers to pick from. You've got Albon, Gasly, Alonso, Vettel. I would have said Perez, but apparently, according to the end of some press conferences yesterday at the Monaco Grand Prix, he kind of basically alluded to the fact that he's already signed a contract, so Perez is kind of off the market now. So, Albon, Gasly, Perez, Alonso, they're kind of the main names that, not Perez, sorry, Vettel, are kind of the names that we're looking at to really potentially join McLaren in the near future if Ricciardo can't get this right. In terms of a split and why I think it could work is I actually think this could be exactly what Ricciardo needs and what McLaren might need to sort of help them get into that top 3 fight again. I think for Ricciardo in particular, if he gets put into a smaller team who's obviously going to build that car around him because they know when Ricciardo is on it, he's one of the quickest drivers on the grid. So if you can get a car that's purring under Ricciardo's stewardship, then you are going to get results. And inevitably for a smaller team, you are going to rack up points and get up that grid, which leads to more investment, more money, more opportunities, better results, essentially, all around for the teams as well. And I think that if you give Ricciardo the first driver mentality, like he did with Alpine or Renault back in the day, he can lead a team pretty well. So I do think there is an ability for Ricciardo to absolutely go smash it at another team. I don't think this is the end of Ricciardo. I don't think it's the end of him potentially with McLaren, because for me, what I want to see Ricciardo do after this Monaco Grand Prix is just go into the next race and the rest of the season and absolutely tear everyone a new one and just show everybody how good a driver we all know he is and how capable he is of being. Let's see how it goes for the rest of the season. I do think it's going to be a struggle for him for the rest of the season because obviously you can just see in his interviews and his press conferences, his confidence is probably reaching an all-time low. With Lando stock being as high as it is, and then you've got things that just don't help the speculation, like Zak Brown's comments. You've got Lando, who had tonsillitis at the Spanish Grand Prix, finishing in the top 10, and Ricciardo wasn't really near that. And then you've had the crash he had in practice this weekend, and then he's had more issues. So for me, it's going to be a hell of a turnaround if he manages to do it this season. But I, for one, hope he does. I'll always support Ricciardo. He is... he was the guy that got me into Formula One, and I'm a big supporter of him, and I really hope he does turn it around, no matter whether that's with McLaren or with another team. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you did enjoy this video and this little bit of opinion on the Ricciardo and McLaren situation. Let me know in the comments what you think of the situation, whether they should break, whether Ricciardo needs more time, whether he should get into the 2023 season with McLaren, or anything else in between. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because it has really helped us grow the channel. We're getting decent views on the majority of the videos, and that's thanks to you guys spreading the word and hitting that subscribe button. So thanks very much, and I'll see you soon.